It's now been nearly 4 decades since Neil Armstrong took his giant leap for mankind, if, that is, he ever set foot off this planet. The moon landings were faked. Apollo 11 didn't happen. Humans never set foot on the moon. Heard all this before?
Conspiracy theories surrounding the moon landings have proved worryingly persistent in the 50 years since Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin took their first small steps on the lunar surface.
If you find yourself in a debate questioning whether humankind first stepped on the moon on the 20th of July 1969, the chances are that you are woefully underprepared.
Most people take it as gospel that the U.S. government, NASA, the 12 astronauts in total who have walked on the moon, and the 400,000 people involved in the Apollo program would have neither the will nor the way to fake one of humanity's greatest ever achievements. But there are those who think the landings were a hoax. They claim the U.S. government faked Apollo 11 and later missions either to deal a crucial blow to the USSR in the space race, or to boost NASA funding, or to divert attention away from the Vietnam War.
The argument for any of these viewpoints rests on finding evidence that the landings were faked. And more often than not, people point out peculiarities in specific images or videos to deal the critical blow. If someone uses these oddities as evidence, what do you say? Here are the most common arguments that support this view, and why each of them is wrong.
Theory 1. Shadows in the moon landing photos prove the images were faked. Take a look at the image below, and at the full panorama on the NASA website. Look closely at the shadows cast by astronaut Neil Armstrong and another object just out of shot. What's wrong with them?
Well, no. This is on the surface of the moon, but we can reproduce this effect anytime we want on Earth. You have all seen this phenomenon yourself, where, because of perspective, parallel lines appear to be non-parallel. If you are trying to reduce onto a two-dimensional plane a three-dimensional situation, you can make lines do all sorts of weird things. Artists have been using this for centuries.
Theory 2. Apollo astronauts could not have survived Earth's radiation field. Earth is surrounded by a zone of charged particles known as the Van Allen radiation belt. These are regions surrounding the Earth and our magnetic field where high-energy trapped particles from the Sun tend to get confined, Professor Aja says. What that means is if you are going into these regions, there are extremely high radiation concerns.
If that is the case, how did the Apollo astronauts travel through the Van Allen radiation belt and out of Earth's orbit unharmed? Surely the amount of radiation would have killed them. Doesn't this prove that the moon landings were a hoax?
Theory 3. Why are there no stars in pictures of the NASA moon landings? If the image really was taken on the moon, shouldn't the sky be filled with stars? After all, there is no atmosphere to distort the image, no clouds to interrupt that glorious view. Conspiracy theorists argue that the lack of stars in the Apollo 11 mission photographs prove that the event was staged. NASA could not have faked the full wonder of the lunar sky, and so they simply chose not to include any stars at all.
Here's another solution. Both the astronauts and the lunar landscape itself are brightly lit by the sun. The sky may look black, but remember, this is in fact daytime on the moon. If you're going to take a photo of a brightly lit scene, your camera's shutter speed needs to be fast and your aperture incredibly small. In that situation, faint objects like stars simply aren't going to show up.
Theory 4. The Apollo 11 U.S. flag is waving in the wind, but there's no wind on the moon. Buzz Aldrin saluting the proudly waving American flag on the moon remains one of the iconic images of the Apollo 11 mission, a declaration of U.S. supremacy over space race rivals the Soviet Union. But if there is no atmosphere on the moon, there is no wind, so why is the flag waving? Is this the proof that conspiracy theorists have been seeking?
Look again at the image, and in particular along the top edge of the flag, and you will find the answer. A telescopic pole has been extended along the top in order to make the flag fly proudly.
Theory 5. If we really went to the moon in 1969, why have we never been back? Apollo 17, the last Apollo mission to land astronauts on the moon, took place in 1972. Since then, humans have never returned. Maybe that's because we never went to the moon in the first place.
Apollo 17 wasn't meant to be the end of the story, of course. Throughout the 1970s, there were ambitions to establish a permanent lunar base before turning to the next major space exploration challenge, Mars.
It never happened, but this was no grand conspiracy, this was geopolitics. The answer is we changed our priorities, from a combination of the Vietnam War, but also there was this geopolitical element of thinking, we've won the race. Just as we got good at doing science on the moon, we abandoned it.
Apollo 11 50 years on, leaving our mark on the moon. The moon landings were not a hoax. Apollo 11 did happen. Humans really did set foot on the moon. We have countless images, videos, lunar samples, and scientific data to prove it. But more than that, human exploration has literally left its mark on the moon's surface.
In 2009, we sent a lunar reconnaissance orbiter to map the lunar surface in 3 or 4 orders of magnitude more resolution than had ever been managed before, Professor Ajja says. Every single Apollo landing site was pictured. Absolutely stunning. In conclusion, the Apollo moon landing missions remain one of the greatest achievements of human history. The evidence supports the fact that the moon landing was not a hoax, but a remarkable feat of engineering, technology, and human bravery.
The photos, rock samples, and data gathered during the missions have expanded our understanding of the moon and the solar system. The legacy of the Apollo missions continues to inspire generations and drive scientific and technological advancements that benefit us all.